Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fadi Al Daoud. I'm the greenhouse vegetable specialist with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. My co-host for this GrowON webinar is Dr. Siobhan Dayball. She's the greenhouse floriculture specialist. The GrowON webinar series, as most of you know, covers topics that include production, as well as integrated pest management issues. Let me just show you a slide here with the four of us. There we go. Oh, there we go. So that's the greenhouse team that you see on your screen there. And as you can see, as I mentioned, there's a number of topics that are covered in these regular webinars that we host. Our webinar today is entitled Alternative Ways of Heating Greenhouses, and we'll be hearing from three experts in energy and energy technologies. First, we'll be hearing from 360 Energy, then from Medley Thermal, and finally from Phoenix Solar Thermal. There was a change in the lineup, so Mohammed Murad from Phoenix Solar Thermal is not able to join us today, but his colleague Ed Korvar will be presenting on behalf of Phoenix Solar Thermal. The webinar is being recorded, but we won't be recording the polling or the Q&A, just to give people a little bit more privacy in terms of asking questions and answering questions as well. Our first speaker for today is, sorry, I lost my place here. There we go. Our first speaker for today is David Arkell. He's the co-founder, president, and CEO of 360 Energy Incorporated. With 25 years experience in the energy industry, David is a recognized honoree of the 2021 Top 100 Energy and Environmental Industry Leaders throughout North America. He's a Canadian and North American energy expert and trusted advisor with a deep understanding of energy and carbon markets and corporate consumer energy management behavior. David's mission is to take charge against climate change by empowering leading organizations across North America to manage their energy and carbon. Through comprehensive energy and carbon management programs, the clients of 360 Energy improve their bottom line and consistently achieve energy and carbon performance improvements year after year. 360 Energy's clientele ranges from manufacturing and cement producers to agriculture and greenhouse growers. You can learn more from David and his team on their weekly podcast, the 360 on Energy and Carbon, informing listeners on industry trends and business strategies. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Fadi, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll share my PowerPoint here if I could. Let me just get that up to the top. Can you see that okay, Fadi?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Well, thank you again, and I guess really my job is to set the table for our two other guest speakers. Because they're going to be talking about technology that you'll want to be looking into as the markets continually evolve and change. And so my message to all the listeners is that it's really important when you're looking at technology that you and the pending suppliers have a full understanding of how you use energy and also future energy pricing. And so what I'm tasked to do today is to give you a heads up on where the market is, examples, and then what things you should be thinking about when you're looking at these different technologies. So my first slide is actually two separate greenhouse operations, vegetable operations. One is a lit greenhouse, one is not a lit greenhouse. They just to give everyone a heads up, two separate crops. So the first greenhouse that you can see, and by the way, we've normalized all the energy data into kilowatt hours. So as most people maybe online would know, it's GJs or cubic meters that you're looking for natural gas. But we wanted to compare it to so you could see the the difference between natural gas and electricity. So and this is per acre too. This gives you a sense of the amount of energy used per acre for different greenhouses. And then ultimately, if you wanted to, you multiply it by how many acres you have. So clearly with the lit greenhouse, you can see that, they're using 22 million kilowatt hours of natural gas per acre a year and 1.5 million kilowatt hours for lighting. The other greenhouse, which does not have lights, and you'll see you can barely see it. They use pumps and they use fans. So you'll see on the top it says 30,000 kilowatt hours per year. That's the amount of electricity they would use. And in this instance, this particular grower uses 18 million kilowatt hours of natural gas. By the way, not only are they different crops, they grow differently, but they're in separate parts of Ontario as well. So it's really hard. So the key point here is you really need to understand your operation and don't assume you're the same as anyone else. The next item I want to bring to people's attention is once you have a full understanding of how you use energy and how you're going to use it going forward, whether it's electricity or natural gas, there's components that are made up in your energy charge that will be impacted by the technology you use. So for example, with electricity, there's two main components that are made up of your bill. One being a demand component and the other being the consumption component. And this is the breakdown of where that is. Again, when you're looking at technology, this could be impactful on your bill depending on how it's used and when it's used. And for natural gas, you can see we've broken it into three separate areas. We've included the commodity and transportation together, and then the distribution, that would be your local distribution company, their breakdown, and then there's a carbon cost associated with that, which may also you're mindful of and that may be impacted by technology you choose going forward. So let me explain what this is. This is actually a graphical of the natural gas market and how it's evolved since 2001. And I've been in the industry for a length of time, so I've actually gone through all this plus more and have seen the cycles that have occurred. But if anyone who's online and they were around in the early 2000s or late 1990s, certainly the gas pricing was significant, and you can see that it reached up. This is just commodity. It doesn't include the distribution costs, doesn't include the transportation costs, but it was up to $12 a GJ. And then what happened with the advent of technology, fracking, actually natural gas pricing really came down significantly to as low or even below $2. So you can see, with exception being, if everyone recalls that polar vortex we had, that really cold spell where natural gas increased significantly to like almost $8 for the commodity. Things have changed dramatically since the pandemic. So certainly since the pandemic, if everyone can recall, when it happened, actually oil for a day or so was trading minus $40 a barrel. And that impacted certainly natural gas pricing itself, but it also scared some producers from drilling and doing additional development of natural gas. Then on top of that, in Europe, there was a shortage of natural gas. And then what happened is, the money being spent for natural gas is far higher than what it is in North America. So natural gas producers started to export their gas. It's called liquefied natural gas to Europe and Asia. And that started to force pricing up. And then on top of that, we have the Russia and Ukraine war, which has even made it even more so. So you now see things trading just on the commodity at $8 a GJ. The other blips that you see below those are future pricing. If you were to buy future pricing, that's what those would trade at. And those are like fractional time that changes all the time. I want just to manage people's expectations that those are futures. I'm bullish on gas. I actually think gas is not going to go to where it was. I'm, we have arguments even in our office. I actually think it's going to be above the $4 mark from what you're already seeing, and that's a really important thing for you to know because of the technologies that's going to be discussed today, but also it impacts electricity, which I'll share with you. Now, allow me to explain this graph. I know it's pretty busy. This is actually a picture of the Ontario grid from May 4th to 10th. And you'll see different generation that is used to fulfill the demand in the marketplace. So you can see that certainly the orange is the nuclear, the blue is a hydro, and you'll see this, I don't know what color you call it, but I've circled it. That's actually gas generation. The red, so you know on this graph, the red is actually the hourly pricing. And so during that period from May 4th to 10th, the actually average pricing in Ontario for the electrical market was less than a penny. So remember, it's commodity, transmission, distribution costs on top of it. But in summary, it was pretty cheap. And that has been the case for many years because we've had excess supply of generation, and quite frankly, natural gas has been cheap. So I want to give you a heads up how things change in the marketplace and what occurs and how you have to be mindful how this impacts what you want to consider in the future. And I apologize for the spelling error. That's it's May 12th to the 18th. This is the next week, and it's a whole different game. So I want to share with you a couple things. Again, those are generation assets that are used to produce power. The red line is the actual hourly market price. So one thing I want to bring to your attention, in the May 12th to 18th, the actual nuclear assets that are used to generate power shrank significantly. And when they shrink, then there has to be generation assets that actually make up the difference. And in the actual case, those generation assets are natural gas. And also in summary, you'll note the actual demand of the grid that was required also increased significantly. So what am I saying to you? I'm suggesting going forward, one, the nuclear assets, there's going to be some maintenance going on. And so they'll have to make up that difference with natural gas. If the price of natural gas is going to be higher, then certainly the hourly market price will be higher. And you can see in this case, instead of like less than 1 cent, the average price was 5.2 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, remember, that's just commodity. That doesn't include the transmission and distribution costs. So you can see the market is quite dynamic and it's changing drastically. And again, I'm bullish on where electrical or natural gas pricing is going, which may have and it be impactful on you on looking at what technologies you want to consider. The next graph I'll share with you is looking at the Ontario hourly market. So this starts in 2002. The red items is the hourly Ontario electrical price. So you can see in 2002, the market was close to 7 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm sure all the growers in Ontario, they probably forget or don't want to remember those days. And again, it's been very, very reasonable. In fact, I would say to you, Ontario, if you knew what you were doing, it was the place to, on the electrical side, to actually put lighting in, because some growers were paying 2 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour all in. But things have changed. And in summary, what's happening as the Ontario hourly market price goes up because of gas pricing, because there's more gas generators being used, as that hourly pricing goes up, as it did in 2002, the global adjustment shrinks. So again, if in the past there has been benefits on the global adjustment, if you knew what you were doing, that benefit will still be there, but it will shrink significantly from what growers have been. There'll be more attention towards the electrical marketplace. So I wanted to make sure people are aware of what's happening in the marketplace and how that impacts you going forward. Now, let me share with you what this means to the two growers that we showed examples on. So, and this is a representation per acre, and it's for 2021 and for 2022. So for the greenhouse that was lit in 2021, they were paying perhaps $82,000 an acre. In 2022, because of the market dynamics that I just described to you, they're now paying $140,000 an acre annually for electricity. For the greenhouse operator that was not lit, meaning they had fans and pumps, but they didn't use lights, they were paying $1,200 an acre in 2021, and now in 2022, they're paying $2,000 an acre. Now let's move it to the natural gas side, because I know we're dealing with technology on the natural gas as well as electricity. But again, I'll share with you for the natural gas or for the grower that was using lights in 2021, their cost was $29,000 per acre. And in this year, 2022, it's forecasted to be $48,000 an acre. And the one that was unlit, $22,000 in 2021 and $40,000. The summary is costs have gone up dramatically. And I don't have to tell you, growers, you see this in everything that you do, but certainly now there's an opportunity where you have to start thinking about what you can do to help mitigate those costs. And I will end this and suggest to you that it will be really important before you look at any technologies to truly understand your energy consumption and how that impacts the pricing that you have available to you. And if you do that, then you'll be able to pick the best option available to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dave. That was very informative. And as you said, sets the stage for the next two presenters. And as just a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, just pop them in the Q&A if you like, or you can wait until the Q&A session at the end and raise your digital hand and you can come on and ask your question in person. Our next speaker is Jordan Kearns, who's the founder and CEO of Medley Thermal, a company developing projects that link clean, cheap electricity to heating loads. Jordan and Medley Thermal are based out of the greater Boston area. Prior to founding Medley, Jordan worked as an independent consultant in the energy sector, advising industry, nonprofits, and governments on energy economics and decarbonization. Carbon received master degrees in energy technology and policy, as well as nuclear engineering from the MIT. Thanks a lot for joining us, Jordan.
Thanks, buddy. Let's see. I'm not sure if I have the permissions to turn on the video.
Okay, let me take a look here.
We see it now.
Okay, yeah, I see your screen and you should be able to turn your video on. There you go.
All right, thank you, Fadi. And thanks everyone for your attention. I really appreciate it. As Fadi mentioned, I am Jordan, the founder and CEO of Medley Thermal. And Medley Thermal exists, as Fadi mentioned, to link clean, cheap electric power to thermal systems. And I'll get in to exactly how we do that. But I wanted to start actually kind of the same thread that David was going down and talking just about the relative economics of gas and electricity and some of the challenges we see for electric heating in general. And that'll give you the backdrop for how our solution looks to overcome those challenges. So this comes actually from a US study, and I've adapted the numbers slightly to affect recent prices in Ontario, though not quite as recent as some of the data David gave you that reflects the recent surge in natural gas pricing from the conflict in Ukraine and just the movement of liquefied natural gas from North America to Europe. But this gives you a sense of where things have been historically. And that is the difficulty of electrifying large heating loads, especially higher temperature loads where you can't use a heat pump and you're looking to use a boiler for either higher temperature hot water or steam, is that electricity as a source of heat has been about 3 times as expensive as using a gas combustion unit. And the math on that is pretty simple. That's you're paying on a per million BTU basis. So just levelizing the energy units here. For gas, you might be paying $8.80 delivered for your gas. Burning that at 80% efficiency and having an effective cost of heat of $11. The electric boiler, though it's highly efficient, roughly 99%, the cost of electricity per unit energy is much higher. So even though that's a more efficient process, the cost of primary energy for electricity is significantly higher. And that's led to this wide disparity between the cost of heating with a combustion boiler and an electric boiler. And the history that has played out, almost everyone historically has used gas boilers as opposed to electric boilers because of this difference in the economics. And the study that put this assessment together originally, I think they summed it up very well. They said that even though electric boilers tend to have lower capital costs than gas boilers, and as I mentioned, are more energy efficient, it just doesn't overcome the fact that electricity typically is about 3 times as expensive as natural gas on an energy basis. And that's a steep economic hurdle to overcome if you are looking to electrify your thermal loads as part of a decarbonization strategy. I think this analysis is completely right. It definitely reflects the history that has led us to combustion boilers being the dominant source of steam or hot water heating, but it neglects one factor that we think really makes a difference and enables electricity to become economic in certain circumstances as a heating fuel. And that is, it neglects the temporal variability of electricity costs. And David, I think, really teed it up well for me. I think he said in his presentation that the power market is quite dynamic, and that's very, very true, particularly in electricity. Also, as David mentioned, Ontario, almost paradoxically, has some of the most and least expensive power in North America. As he mentioned, with global adjustment, if you knew what you were doing and you were savvy about how and when you consumed, you could get a significantly lower all-in delivered cost of power than the typical average delivered cost. So what I'm showing here, this is the one sort of chart I want to show, but I think it's important. David showed a few charts that had power prices chronologically, where you'd see the prices going up and down over a given couple week period. This is a price, I believe, from last year that has all of those up and down prices over a year. But now, instead of having them chronologically ordered, we've ordered them from highest cost hour to lowest cost hour. So we've removed that chronology and simply ranked the pricing for electricity. As David mentioned, not only do you have the commodity price, you also have delivery charges, which include global adjustment and various distribution charges. So this is based off of the Ontario HOEP price, that hourly Ontario energy price, as well as the tariff for Electra, one of the utilities within Ontario, but the overall effects are very generalizable throughout the province. And what you see is that there are a few hours that really drive costs. Historically, that's been in part due to global adjustment. As David mentioned, that will increasingly be due to hours where you have high prices due to using a significant amount of gas-fired generation or other types of peaking plants. But a lot of the time, because of Ontario having a system based primarily on nuclear, hydroelectric, plans for growing amounts of renewable generation, that type of generation, while very expensive to build, is very inexpensive to run. And if you're consuming in the off-peak period, that inexpensive to run factor is really what sets the HOAT price and leads to lower prices. So what you see again is this graph, and that far left side doesn't even really hit the peak. It actually goes much, much higher. I have to cut off the y-axis just to make the graph and the trend somewhat visible. But you really have a few periods that really can drive and determine your overall costs of electricity for an entire year, even though it's just a few hours. And what we see if we start looking at the area under this curve is if you were consuming electricity flat out over a year, that 20% of the time would actually comprise 80% of your costs over the year. And that's, again, just a testament of how impactful those peak periods could be to your overall energy costs. Now, the converse of that is, and I picked that 80% number for a reason, is that if you go to the other 80% of periods, the lowest cost 80% of periods, you'll see that electricity is 20% of the average rate. So again, if the top 20% of hours is 80% of your costs, the natural converse of that is the bottom 80% of hours are only 20% of that average rate. And again, the numbers here are a bit dated. Gas prices have gone up significantly since I put this graph together, I believe last year. But roughly that 80% of the time, power could be cheaper than natural gas in Ontario. And as David mentioned, a lot of things are changing. I really should, he's reminded me, update this analysis just based on how dynamic the market has been over the past few months. But the general trend still remains true, and may even be more extreme given the rapid increase in natural gas prices. So that's really the first and primary lesson I just would love to teach anyone who is a major energy consumer. And again, this goes back exactly to what David said, that being in control and understanding how you consume energy is extremely important, especially in a market that is this dynamic, where peaks have such a dramatic impact on your overall cost of energy. And again, the other lesson that I think comes out of that is when electricity is used is much more important than how much is used. So again, if you're consuming in those off-peak hours, it doesn't necessarily matter if you are consuming massive amounts of electricity, as long as you are being well behaved with that load and using that at a low impact period. The price of that energy can be very low, but a little bit of power at the wrong time can really drive your costs. The second point, again, David really teed it up well for me. I don't need to go into this too much. He gave a lot more detail, but even leaving aside the geopolitical issues that have led to rising gas prices, the pullback in investment in oil and gas drilling and exploration due to the pandemic, leaving all of that aside, even the increase in the federal carbon price alone would be leading to a 25% increase in gas prices for growers over the next 8 years. I know growers get a discount due to their trade exposure on that carbon tax, but even including that reduction in the carbon tax, the carbon tax increases alone that have been planned by the federal government will be leading to that 25% increase, even if nothing were to happen on the geopolitical side. So again, I don't think I need to dwell on this because David hit it so well, but we are looking at a world where we probably also have a bullish view of gas prices just because of a number of factors, including the carbon price increases that are scheduled to take effect over the next few years through 2030. And that leads us to our solution. And really what we see as the opportunity here is to be smart consumers of electricity. So Medley Thermal works with industrial facilities and large commercial facilities to essentially hybridize their boiler heating processes. Facilities already have, because of that historical legacy of gas being so much cheaper, a combustion boiler. We don't replace that. We work to complement that. And our projects add in a parallel electric boiler that's able to pull power from the grid at those times when power is less expensive than natural gas. We work with facilities to understand the cost of getting that upgraded interconnection. I know we've been doing some work specifically with IESO to potentially allow some new electric load growth in the Leamington-Kingsville area, despite transmission constraints there, as long as that electric load is curtailable during system peaks. So we can help with that interconnection process, the engineering for that boiler. But then after that system is installed, we also provide optimization and dispatching software that lets you use your new asset, hybrid asset, in a way to respond to those dynamic conditions that both David and I described. So when you run into a week where gas is really what's driving the power sector, it doesn't make sense to use an electric boiler. You should just be using gas in your combustion boiler. But when you hit a period of time where the power market is being primarily driven by wind, by nuclear, by hydroelectric, power prices tend to fall, and at those times it makes sense to electrify. What we've seen historically in Ontario is we can reduce boiler energy costs by about 25 to 40% and electrify about 60 to 80% of the thermal load. And since your power in Ontario is very low carbon intensity, especially at the times when we would be consuming power, that's almost a 60 to 80% reduction in emissions. And our systems are best situated for large facilities that have larger thermal loads of about 500 boiler horsepower typical load or more. But for those large facilities, we are seeing about a 4-year expected payback period for the projects we're working with in Ontario right now. The last thing I'd like to add is if you are looking down the road, interested in electrification, but not sure, looking to beyond, that sort of 60, 80% I mentioned to how you're going to get to 100% zero carbon. We've had some facilities where they've been looking at potentially replacing that combustion leg with some other type of zero carbon backup system. And that could be renewable natural gas, biomass or biofuel, hydrogen, or even some battery or thermal storage, but basically some other stored source of energy that you can release to heat your greenhouse when power prices are high. What's nice is that's not something that you have to take on now. This is a project that you can add on immediately with no regrets, and then come back and look at getting that last 20 to 40% decarbonization down the road as some of these other less mature technologies come online. The last thing I'd like to mention is the impact on global adjustment and Class A designation. So our loads are highly flexible, and to make the economics work, you have to be a large enough power consumer where you can get very sophisticated time of use rates that includes the global adjustment peak avoidance Class A designation. If you are a facility that currently, maybe an unlit greenhouse that doesn't have significant electric loads, but you have a lot of acreage and you have a lot of heating loads, the added electric boiler load could help you qualify for that Class A designation, which would also have co-benefits for reducing your power costs by allowing you then to be a dynamic consumer there on the power side, and pull back on power consumption for your other loads at times when we're looking at a global adjustment peak event. So that's something that is interesting to you, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Yeah, if you're a greenhouse and this is something that you're interested in looking at, I would actually start by reiterating David's point that the best thing you can do is have a good sense of how you are currently using energy. If you reach out, that'll be the first thing I ask, is some information on your current loads, which we could use to then kind of put together a sense of what dynamic electrification of your greenhouse might look like. So I would definitely start there. But if that is data that you have and this sounds interesting to you, my email is there on the screen, jordan@medleythermal.com. I'd be happy to talk with you about your operation and how electrification might make sense as a way to reduce your energy costs and carbon emissions.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jordan. Very good information about your technology. We'll move on to Phoenix Solar Thermal. Ed Korvar is the consultant for business development solutions with Phoenix Solar Thermal. Ed is a professional business executive with over 35 years experience in business development and sales leadership. His experience spans roles in electrical services, automotive solutions, and electrical manufacturing, including business strategy, sales management, strategic account development, and business unit operations. Ed has a passion for helping customers solve their challenges with the right technologies that lead to sustainable and reliable operations. Ed is responsible for providing consultation and support in the sales and business development initiatives for Phoenix Solar Thermal. Hi, Ed.
Good morning, everybody. Just going to share my screen here real quickly. Want to thank Fadi and Siobhan for inviting Mohammed, our general manager, myself, to be part of this presentation today. We are going to be introducing to you solar thermal technology.
So I don't see your screen there, Ed.
Don't see it yet? Okay, let's see here. Okay.
All right, looks good.
Excellent, thank you. So we are introducing solar thermal technology as a strategy for greenhouse heating. Let's just see. So by way of introduction, I first wanted to just talk about CEM Engineering in Phoenix and the connection between our two companies. A number of people in attendance today may have be familiar with CEM Engineering. They are a thermal power engineering firm based in St. Catharines. The founder, Martin Lensink, they deliver on various thermal power solutions, including a number of feasibility studies and anaerobic digesters in the greenhouse industry. For example, both at Bayview and at Vandermeer greenhouses, they were involved with those digesters. As part of delivering thermal power solutions, CEM founded Phoenix Solar Technology in 2021. And what we provide turnkey thermal solutions to the marketplace. So that would involve both the providing of a solar field, the engineering required for preparing to tie into the greenhouse process, the installation, and then post-project service contracts. We are based in St. Catharines. We are currently the exclusive supplier for Epsilicon solar thermal collectors. And our hopes and plans are by next year that we will be establishing a production facility within the Niagara region. So what is solar thermal technology? Basically, it's collectors that have been designed specifically for industrial applications, collecting energy from the sun, and in turn, then through a heat exchanger, transferring that to either steam, air, or liquid for a greenhouse operation or industrial operation. The solar central panel that you see there is both a heat exchanger and an automated control system, which allows for the collectors to be tracking the sun throughout the day so that we have optimum performance of the collectors. So this is different than what most people think about with solar when they think of solar PV panels for generating electricity. What we are doing is generating hot water and steam. The T160 collectors are designed specifically for industrial applications and can deliver up to 160 degrees C. And they have a very high efficiency, the highest in the industry of 76%. So just as a comparison, a typical solar PV panel would be 20%. At a 76% efficiency level, we are able to have a field that is much smaller than a comparable solar PV field, and through that, deliver power to the greenhouse. The design of the reflector, it's been a result of 20 years of R&D by Epsilicon. The reflector itself, basically like a magnifying glass, is collecting the rays of the sun, concentrating those rays to the middle, where we then have the receiver tube that is typically flowing glycol as a medium for collecting the energy. And then as that's then pumped back to the solar central unit, we are then converting that to steam or to hot water. The collectors have a glass cover, which is self-cleaning in terms of the surface of the glass, and also gives protection to the collectors. Should also mention that the tracking of the sun, the movement of the collectors, also leads to then being able to turn the collectors over at night, which reduces contaminations and helps with preventive maintenance of the units. The design of these collectors is quite involved. It involves a number of patents that either are established or are pending. And not only is it 20 years of research there, we now have had pilot installations in place across various countries, both in Europe and in Africa over the last 10 years. So for many of you listening today, the idea of a solar thermal panel might be quite familiar if you're using, for example, a heating system on the roof of your garage to heat the water for your pool. What's unique here is that it is an industrial designed product. The modular construction allows both for various ways of installing the field, be it on the ground, which would be the lowest cost, on the roof, or even creating a overhead superstructure, for example, over a existing tank farm or over a parking lot. So why people are looking at solar thermal, as we've been reminded this morning by David and also reaffirmed by Jordan, there's more and more attention being given to reducing our carbon footprint. This has become a major priority for Fortune 500 corporations. It is a way of greening your brand and the recognition it receives in the marketplace. And also, as we'll talk a little bit further about in a moment, it also allows as greenhouse operators to align yourself with major priorities with your end customers. It brings savings in terms of the tax credit or the carbon tax. And as was highlighted on one of Jordan's slides there, the carbon tax is only going to be increasing from year to year. It's currently at $50 per ton, and it will be increasing to or by the rate of $15 a year, and will only bring more and more cost to operations. In addition to providing savings for the carbon tax, also reducing your energy costs. By using a solar thermal, you're able to displace the natural gas load on your boilers, and through that, then establish not only a stable supply, a secure supply of your energy, but also it is possible to even provide this technology through what we call solar thermal as a service. So in other words, a heat purchase agreement. So then rather than doing a capital expenditure to install this equipment, the reality is that a contract could be established over, say, 15, 20 years, and where the payment is it's for the BTU that are produced over that time span. And what we're finding more and more is that operations are more moving in that direction, because what it does is it allows you to grab the benefits and to avoid the capital expenditure at the beginning. So here is an example of a simulation that we would do in looking at a greenhouse. We identify space for installation of the solar field. And with that then, so for example, the example that we ran very quickly for our presentation today, here is a solar field of about 12,000 square meters. The aperture area is typically about half of the footprint of the solar field. So we're looking at just under 6,000 square meters. And this magnitude of a solar field would produce 3,700 kilowatts of power, and would produce over the year, the figures that you see below, it would produce steam of 4.86 tons per hour, and the result would be a savings of 339 tons per year of oil equivalents, which works out to roughly 11,579 gigajoules per year of natural gas. And it would result in, through that, in carbon emissions reduction of just over 1,000 tons per year. The final thing I'll just highlight is the point I made about how this also strengthens your brand with your end customers. So net zero targets have become a major focus for Fortune 500 companies. And so when you think, look at the Walmarts, the IKEAs, the Home Depots, just as examples of people that are drawing from the greenhouse industry for floral products, or Loblaws when it comes for vegetables. We see that in every case, driving toward a net zero corporate goal is a key priority. And so therefore, an added benefit in looking at this technology to displace the need for natural gas ultimately aligns yourself potentially quite strongly with what has become a front of mind priority for our mutual customers out in the marketplace. Thank you. That brings me to the conclusion of our presentation. I'll turn it back to you, Fadi. And again, on behalf of Mohammed, thank you so much for inviting us today.